So I want to pick up where we left off on our previous video on setting up a BDR appliance. So where we left it off, we'd just installed ShadowProtect and we'd had a first backup run. The destination was to our BDR server that we're setting up, which is another virtual machine. But at the moment it's just a standard Windows 10 machine with a shared folder that we're backing up to. So as you can see, our backups have been running. I didn't actually go through how to recover files from a backup. If you do need to do that, you can select any of the backups in the timeline. This image, this mount image, if you put your password in, you can choose the drive letter that you want to mount the image as. Mount it as read-only. You're not planning on to make any changes. And now we have our second drive. This drive that we mounted is our backup drive. So if we deleted any folders off our original machine, we can basically, go in and just copy them back. When we're done with the image, we can dismount it. So it's basically how you can do file recovery. So going back over to our BDR appliance, let's say it's just a standard Windows 10 machine with our data drive, backup folder, and you can see our backups. If you do it on date modified, C volume B001 is the base image, and then the rest are incremental. The MD5 files are what StorageCraft Image Manager uses to verify that the files haven't changed. I'll go through that in a second. So in order to make our backup appliance useful, we need to download StorageCraft Image Manager, which will basically take care of the maintenance of our backup images. So head over to storagecraft.com, spell it right. Head over to software updates. And we want Image Manager. So let's download the executable. Let's save that. Okay. So let's go ahead and run it. It is free, you don't need a license or anything for Image Manager. It complements ShadowProtect. You should only be using Image Manager with continuous incremental backups. You wouldn't use it for any other type of backup. Finish, it will require a reboot. And while that's rebooting, one thing I want to point out, I probably should have mentioned, there is a reason I haven't done it, and it's because of shadow control. You won't really need to do this if you're using shadow control. But if our backups fail for any reason, we need to know why. So if we go into File, Notification Settings, and in here you can specify who to send the email to, prefix it with machine name, on backup failure. and you can also send weekly reports through, monthly reports through. If you click SMTP settings, you can put your email server settings in here. Just thought I should mention that. Okay, let's go back to see where we're up to. We're in the middle of a reboot. Okay, we've rebooted, so let's go into Image Manager. You need to put a password in. So set a new password. Again, don't forget your password, you'll need that password. So this is Image Manager. Basically, it will keep track of all the backups, verify them, consolidate them. There's a few settings that we need to change initially. So I've got to agent settings. This is important that you change. The default's set to midnight. I changed this to, well, make sure you change it to something later than midnight, so 12:15 is good. Basically because of time zone changes, if you're running it in a virtual machine and the time's out of sync slightly, it can cause problems, so it's very important that you change that. Use global password for encrypted images. So set this to the same password that you use to encrypt your backup images. Agent performance impact. Okay, because this is a dedicated backup appliance, we can go ahead and set this straight up to high. It's not being used for anything else, it's dedicated to Image Manager, so that's fine. Replication, I'm not going to go into this at the moment, I'll go into that at another stage. The only thing I will mention about replication is you can limit, it's if you're doing sending things to cloud, or if you're using intelligent FTP or shadow stream to replicate jobs off-site, you can limit the transfer speeds to, say, 2 meg, and you can set it between, say, 7 AM and 6 PM. Limit it to 1 megabytes a second. It's important to understand this bit. I say I'm not going to go into replication, but it's important to understand this bit. If you set simultaneous jobs to 2, it basically doubles these figures. So because it's per backup folder or backup job, so setting this to 2 effectively sets this to 4. If you set up to 3, it basically sets this to 6 megs, and this to 3. So you just need to be aware of that. Also, the rate, you can change this to kilobytes a second, and this needs to be a minimum of 256. You can set it lower, but it needs to be a minimum of 256. It just won't work if you set it lower. So change the defaults back. Global retention. So these are retention settings for your backup files, and it's important that you understand this bit, which is why I'm trying to keep the videos short on Image Manager, because you do need to understand the basics of it. So intra-daily image files keep for at least 7 days. So this is like basically all your hourly incrementals and stuff. You can go back every hour for 7 days. I've typically found this to be a low figure. I'd change this to 14. If someone deleted a file and don't realise it for a week, it's handy to be able to go back. Keep consolidated daily image files. So after 14 days, you basically a backup chain Let's go into it and show you. So your backup chain, where you've got I001, I002, I003, they're your daily incrementals, and this is what we're talking about. So after 14 days, they'll be collapsed into a single consolidated daily file. So again, generally set that at 14 as well. Keep consolidated weekly image files for at least 90 days is a little bit too much. So obviously the dailies then get collapsed into weeklies. The daily incrementals get collapsed into dailies, and then after 14 days those dailies will get collapsed into weeklies. I do find that's a bit much. Let's set that to 60. And then obviously the weeklies will then be collapsed into monthlies after 4 or 5 weeks. So set that up. Do not enable this option unless your backups are using ShadowProtect 5 or later. To be honest, you only need to make sure that the last backup was run with version 5 or later, which it will be if you're doing it today anyway, which is November 2019. But as long as the last incremental backup was taken using ShadowProtect 5 or later, it can handle it and you'll be fine. So yes, we'll go ahead and do that. Again, 12 months generally tends to be a bit long, I find. I set that to 8. These basically, you'd sit down with your customer and find out, how they want their backups to work and what retention policies they want. Move all consolidated image files instead of deleting them. Yeah, I guess it's trying to be non-destructive. You want this unticked. If it moves all the files into a subdirectory, you're just going to run out of disk space very, very quickly. Locations. So these are basically paths to where backup images are stored. So we can go ahead on this. They're on the local drive. Local storage. Backup. Select. It doesn't require authentication because it's local, but if it was a network drive, basically you can back up to FreeNAS or something, or some other network attached storage, and you'd put the username and password in to connect. Just go ahead and add that, and that's basically it for the settings. So that gives the default settings. So what we need to do now is basically start managing a folder. So go ahead and do this. Folder path. Select our backups. Description. Local backups. Folder type. I'm going to set it to normal in this case. If you had multiple machines, basically you'd create a folder within the backup directory for each machine, and then if you point it to the top level folder, you can change it to backup store, and it'll basically manage all the folders underneath that as well if you've got multiple machines. We don't need authentication. Generally set this to the password that we had. Assign sort priority. You can leave this and it'll do it in alphabetical order. If you change it, I set this to 1. So if you've got multiple backup jobs, you can order them in the importance of your servers. Verification. Immediately verify new image files as they're created. You want this ticked. So basically, as soon as Image Manager detects a new backup file has been put in the storage folder, it will verify it and make sure it's okay. Basically, by creating an MD5 for the file, and it'll, to make sure that file hasn't changed. periodically re-verify. This is also another important option that you want. So every week or 7 days or whatever you set it to, it will re-verify the existing image files. So it'll go through and check the image files against the MD5 to make sure that they've not been changed. Reasons for them changing could be, virus, ransomware attack, if you've got a faulty network cable, causes file corruption. So basically you want this on. This I'll go through at another stage. It's basically an advanced verification stage which will virtually boot your backup files and make sure that they get to the login screen where you press Control Alt Delete, and it'll wait for, you can set it to wait for 5 minutes and take a screenshot. Again, I'll go through that at another stage. This is the basic settings of Image Manager. And retention, again, if you wanted to override, it will use the ones that we set in the agent settings. You can change these again to anything you want. If you do want to override them. So we've added our backup destination. You'll notice straight away it's found a file and it started verifying our first backup file. This is the very first base image that we did. So I'll go through and verify that file and make sure that that's fine. Just while it's doing the verification, again with the notifications on ShadowProtect, you can do the same from Image Manager. You can go into notification settings, do email setup, your server name, server port. If you require authentication, the sender's email address, who you're sending it to, and the subject. The conditions and inactivity. So it will warn you if there's been no backups gone into that folder in this period. I generally set this at 1 because if no backups have been made in that day, there's something wrong. Low free space, I'd set this to 25. If you leave it at 5%, by the time the hard drive is full, it gives you very little time to respond to it. If you're in bed or whatever, give yourself some time to respond, so set it to 25% low space. And what do you want notifications for? So backup failures, any backup warnings, inactivity, low free space, and if you want the backup summaries. We're nearly done with this verification. So it's now verifying the next file, the I001, I002. These are your incrementals. Okay. So we can see our backup files down here. How much space we've got free. How much of our backups to take in. Verification settings. Consolidation settings, and what we've got our retention settings set to. We can do verify chain, which verifies the full backup chain. I'll explain what the backup chain is in a minute. Okay. Now the other options we have: view chain shortest path. Basically shows you all the backup files that you needed. The idea of a backup chain, as I say, is it'll start off. You get your first base image, which is your first backup runoff. Then you start getting the incrementals. They get collapsed into dailies. The dailies will eventually get collapsed into weeklies. The weeklies will get collapsed into monthlies, and this is what your backup chain is. An image manager's job is to basically always keep the shortest path. If you was to restore from, if you had 1,000 files in your backup chain, it'd take a long while to restore. So this is what image manager's job is to keep your chain as short as possible. And you can remove images if necessary. So what happens if our backup chain gets corrupt? Well, let's go ahead and have a look. We flip over to our backup system. Just start a backup now. This other option here, by the way, rebase, basically allows you to create a full new backup chain. So let's go ahead and run an incremental backup. Okay, so we took our backup. The latest one is in the backup chain is 004. So if we destroy our chain, or we get a problem in our chain, what happens? Well, let's go ahead, go into our backup folder. So let's say the incremental 3, which is part of our backup chain, is corrupt for some reason. I'll go ahead and do this. Okay, so we've deleted that. I'm going to delete it as well. So now if we go ahead, start processing. You see straight away verifications failed. So it's showing that our chain is incomplete. So what does that mean? Basically we need to fix it. This is why it's important to have notification setting on, so you know if anything happens like this. Shadow control can also monitor that. Again, that's something separate and we'll go into that. So what happens if we try and run another backup? Start backup now, start an incremental backup. Okay, so our incremental was successful. I expected it to be. ShadowProtect, unless they've changed it, we'll do an incremental from the last backup. It might actually not be aware that the chain's broken. Let's have a look at our backups. I've never seen that before. Let's go into Image Manager. Start processing. Okay, let's fix the backup itself. You used to have to delete the last, if 3 was corrupt, then basically delete 3 onwards and run another incremental backup and it'd fix it. I must have changed that. So let's see if we can mount it. Yeah, okay. It managed to resolve the issue itself without manual intervention. I'm not sure when they changed that. It's a while since I've played about deleting backup chains and stuff. Yeah, that was new on me. So this method of mounting the backups through ShadowProtect, if we try and access our BDR, what's it called, W10 BDR, it's asking for network credentials, so our machine doesn't have access to it, which obviously protects your backups. So as long as we do a mount, and we mount it as read-only, which is all you'll ever need to do if you're just recovering a file. And you can go in and recover your files, and this is pretty safe. Yeah. And it won't actually delete. So that's a pretty safe way to do your backups. Disk is write protected. So that is the basics of Image Manager and ShadowProtect. Your backups are now working. Image Manager is working in the background. If you've set notifications up in here, you'll get notified of any backup failures. If you've set your notifications up within Image Manager, you'll get notification of any backups not being taken in the time that we specified on the notification settings for inactivity. That's pretty much it for Image Manager. I've not gone into replication and stuff yet, which I'll go into replication jobs and head HSR jobs, head start restores, which basically takes your backups and seeds them to a VHD, which can be imported into VirtualBox or Hyper-V. You can finalize it and you can boot it into a production environment. So that's as far as we're going to go with today's video. There's so much more to Image Manager. I could do videos on it for the next year. So many other options that it does. So I'll follow them with future videos. So do me a favour, if you found this video useful, please go ahead and hit that like button. Please feel free to subscribe to the channel to get future updates. I hope this helped. Thank you.